let's turn to the next question, society and political order. When sages and noblemen have internalized the spirit of Li in themselves and have overcome their own blind passions, they are able to create and maintain order in society as a whole. This is a formidable task. The practice of Li and righteousness as methods of socialization is to be supported and reinforced by rewards and punishments, even though kingly government is most successful in Mencius' sense. As in the case in Confucius, the qualitative difference between constraints based on force and constraints based on Li remains. Only through Li can one ultimately subdue or transform the hearts of men. Both types of constraints are external. They are both mechanisms for directing behavior imposed from outside. In dealing with society as a whole, teaching must be supplemented by rewards and punishments. Incentives such as material rewards and honors must be bestowed on worthy officials. Even men of virtue continue to cherish creaturely desires, no matter how much these desires are governed and constrained by Li and righteousness. Without these incentives, most ordinary men will not wish to assume the burden of office. In contrast to Mencius, Xunzi does not abruptly reject the hegemonic conception of government. When King Tang of Shang and King Wu of Zhou ruled, they were able to transform society by inculcating Li and righteousness. The hegemonic ruler of later times, such as King Huan of Qi and famous Guanzhong, succeeded in establishing a system of penal law and a system of government based on incentives. They were able to maintain the framework of a livable society. Quote, even though they had an eye to profit and loss, they did not deceive their people. End quote. They were able to control their own appetites and impulses to create a viable system. This might be a system ultimately based on force. They were able to apply the same principles of long-term self-interest to the realm of interstate affairs. However, they were never able to attain the highest principles of government and were never truly able to win the hearts of the people. In addition to the hegemonic system of government and contemporary legalistic experiments of Lord Shang in the state of Qin, there was a third model of government. This model of government is based on simple scheming and plotting, 权谋. It is arbitrarily unbridled pursuit of short-term petty interests by those in power. Their pursuit of wealth, power, and luxury is ungoverned by any respect for either Li or law, whether in domestic affairs or in the interstate balance of power. Unlike kings and hegemons, They will not allow their impulses and caprices to be cured by any system of either li or law. In this context, the hegemonic or legalist model seems to represent a step toward virtue. Xunzi is bent on making the Confucian point that even this less than perfect model requires a minimal moral foundation of mutual trust between rulers and the ruled. The machinery of punishment, rewards, and rules requires a state of mind based on expectations of predictable behavior by the ruler. The same point is made with regard to military force. In a dialogue in the presence of King Cheng of Zhao, the military expert Lord Lin Wujun stresses variables such as topography, accurately observing the plans and movements of the enemy, observing weather conditions, and strategies of deception. Quote, "These are the essential techniques for employing armies." Unquote. Xunzi replies, quote, "Not so. I have heard that according to the ancient way, the fundamental principle in employing armies and carrying on warfare was to reunite the people. The essential in military affairs is to remain close to the people." Unquote. The morale of the people is fundamental. And with a people, an army that trusts its rulers and generals, all things can be accomplished. So, the variability of rulers to employ legitimate force in both domestic affairs and foreign wars depends on a certain moral cement binding rulers and the ruled. Xunzi may not entirely despair of the emergence of a kingly ruler in his time, but he has no expectations based on any view of heaven's way in history. He is not loath to offer legalistic advice alongside of his Confucian vision. He is even to relate himself to the ruler's overwhelming obsession with wealth and power. However, Xunzi is by no means a precursor of legalism, although he is either a contemporary or successor of some of that school's important founding fathers, such as Lord Shang, Shen Dao, and Shen Bu Hai. He does incorporate what he regards as correct in their teaching into the body of his Confucian outlook, but he fiercely resists what he regards as pernicious in their views. His relative approval of hegemonism seems to reflect their influence. In fact, as we have seen, Confucius had not entirely rejected the role of force and penal law in human affairs. Confucius had shown a certain ambiguity in relation to the hegemons. Xunzi's system provides a fairly plausible explanation of how he is able to accommodate legalist elements within it. His critique of legalism is a cogent Confucian criticism before his disciple Han Feizi had constructed his grand legalist synthesis. Xunzi reports on his visits to Qin. In there, he witnessed the results of reforms instituted by the famous Lord Shang. The whole system of penal law was presumably in place. The system of advancement based on merit in both state and army was also in place. Xunzi finds the backwoods Qin people simple and unspoiled. They fear and obey their government. The officials all do their work with dispatch and integrity. There are no factions and no corruption. The simple people seem to have the virtues of the men of antiquity. His point is that the system works so well precisely because the semi-barbaric people are so rustically simple. They have not experienced the higher values of civilization. They have not experienced the corruptions of civilization either. Quote, their music is not lascivious, and their dress is not frivolous. Unquote. Although he expresses great admiration for the Qin methods, he remarks that a state which completely eliminates the moral influence of the Confucian nobleman is bound to lose in the end. He has no objection to the meritocratic aspects of the system. He is prepared to admit that strong penal law and rewards for merit are necessary in all times and all places. However, he observes that Qin is in a constant state of anxiety. Due to its aggressive foreign policy, it is in constant dread that the world will unite to crush it. In the sacred history of the past, Kings Tang and Wu had, with their comparatively small states as a base, been able to win the trust and the confidence of the surrounding states. They created a victorious alliance by winning the confidence of others. Rewards, punishment, and other external coercive methods may create an order for a time within a society, but when they are applied to an aggressive foreign policy, they can lead only to disaster. In his praise of hegemonic or legalistic state, Xunzi never hesitated for a moment in his basic commitment to the higher ideal of the kingly state. He believed that only a kingly state could truly reunite the world. He did not expect any heavenly assistance in bringing about the restoration of the good state. But given his faith in the sacred history of the past, he probably had no doubt that the basic model could be restored in the future. His view of the ultimate kingly system seems to involve some strikingly new emphasis. His radical emphasis on the meritocratic principle is particularly striking. Rewards and punishment seem to play a considerable role in his concept of ideal state. Xunzi accepts the decline of the whole hereditary subnobility with the states of his time, as well as the trend toward bureaucratic mobility. Quote, the incapable must be dismissed. without hesitation. The children and grandchildren of kings, dukes, and high functionaries must be returned to the ranks of commoners if they cannot identify with Li and righteousness. The children and grandchildren of commoners, if they are able to acquire true learning, to correct their conduct and act according to the dictates of Li and righteousness, must be elevated to the position of high ministers, and officials. End quote. However, given the nature of man, the prospect that most will ever fully internalize the true spirit of Li and righteousness is not very great. Therefore, coercive sanctions for bad performance must be constantly available. Even men of the highest moral attainment still have a strong desire for rank, wealth, and power. To the extent that these can be enjoyed within the bounds of the system of Li, they have every right to expect generous rewards. Within the good society, the entire rational system of coercive social controls works well precisely because it is maintained by a government of noblemen. Quote, without noblemen, it cannot be done. End quote. The laws must be discussed and mitigated according to circumstance by judgments based on Li and righteousness. Quote, there are such things as good laws going hand in hand with disorder. I have, however, never heard of having disorder where noblemen are in charge. End quote. Office, ranks, laws, and Li must all be clearly defined and articulated, leaving no room for arbitrariness. But in the end, all depends on the integrity of truly noble men. Like Mencius, Xunzi does not completely give up the hereditary principle. In his discussion of the elevation of commoners, he does not include the ranks of kings and lords among the ranks to which they may hope to aspire. The notion that the highest authority should ordinarily remain hereditary is here maintained. Nevertheless, the notion that sanctions of force must play a role, even in the best obtainable Confucian order, provides a Confucian rationale for the entire evolution of legitimate penal law throughout the long history of official Confucianism. In Mencius, there is a vision of Confucian Republic in which society is completely harmonized by the moral power of an ideal ruling vanguard. In such a society, the radiation of moral power would be mediated through the sacred Li and through the appropriate social political institutions. This is somewhat an ideal Confucian utopian. However, Xunzi does not seem to envision such a totally ideal society. Xunzi has by no means lost his faith in the possibility of educating noblemen. He believes that the history of the past provides lots of examples of the emergence of sages and noblemen who, through education and self-education, rise to the highest potentials of their being. Xunzi has by no means given up his faith that noblemen in the future may become rulers, or at least the respected advisors of rulers. Xunzi believes that noblemen have in the past actually fulfilled their transformative educative role in society. He also believes that they can still do so in the present and future. The vast majority of men are resistant to transformation, but they always have been so, even under the sages of old. So, the sages were prepared to reinforce their efforts to transform the people through Li by supplementing Li with incentives relying on rewards and punishments. In an environment in which the people had reasonable expectations that good behavior would be rewarded and evil behavior punished, it became possible for them to open themselves to the transformative and educative effects of Li. The sages and noblemen may in the future, as in the past, bring their moral powers to bear on society as a whole through Li and laws. Their spirit is embodied not only in the Li, but in the laws as well. The fairness of the laws based on the principles of just deserts and a reliable predictability reflects the integrity of noble rulers. Even hegemonic rulers require the achievement of this minimal integrity in the sages and noble men. Their faithfulness in administrating the objective penal and administrative law is simply one aspect of their total moral excellence, which they have been able to achieve in the course of a lifelong self-education. Society may always resist the total kingly transformation, but philosopher kings in the Confucian sense are still possible. Okay, let's stop here with Xunzi. Assignment today. Could you compare Xunzi and Mencius in terms of the issue of human nature? Thank you.